After studying this module, you shall be able to know the meaning of social support network, learn the theoretical perspective on social support research, identify different types of social networks, identify the relationship between social support network and health, analyze the mechanisms through which social support affects health, and understand the nature of social support network in India. Human beings are social by nature. Need for belongingness is fundamental need across lifespan. The social support networks assume a greater importance in the old age as the elderly undergo a transition from their earlier life stage. During this stage, well-being and health are contingent on social support network. Successful aging is often conceived as time free from disability. However, many older adults themselves consider social engagement as more important for successful aging than physical health. Aging is a period of shrinking life space, where the social network of the elderly decreases with age, but nevertheless aging takes place within a social context. Most of the elderly spend time in their immediate neighborhood and the rest inside their homes. Therefore, the house, the neighborhood and community are very crucial to the older people than to the younger age groups. Let us now understand what do we mean by social support network. Bott in 1957 has defined social networks as the pattern of social relationships with and among friends, neighbors and relations. Of late, scholars have broadened this concept to include relationship with the larger community like organizations, work groups, professional caregivers, etc. Antonacci and Akiyama in 1987 conceive of social support networks as the dynamic entities or convoys that change over the life course. Studies have indicated that the social support network of the aged differ from that of the younger population. Most of the surveys have indicated that the networks of aged persons in the Western societies are smaller than the younger people, with many elders living alone. Whereas it has been found that once individuals reach old age, they have a stable size of their social support networks. A social support network is the web of the relationships which surround the individual. It is a pattern of continuous and or intermittent exchanges of mutual assistance that plays a significant role in maintaining the physical, social and psychological needs of an individual over time. Formal social support networks is based upon the interaction of the individual with important role players in the community like physicians, teachers, counselors, mental health professionals, clergy members, among others. Informal social networks, on the other hand, include family members, friends, peers, neighbors, and others. Formal and informal social networks can be differentiated on the basis of the extent of formality involved in interpersonal interactions. Strength of the social support network is contingent on both structural, that is a quantitative, and functional, that is a qualitative aspects of the social connections with the person in the network. Let us now understand the theoretical perspectives on social support research. Leakey and Cohen in 2000 have provided 3 perspectives on social support research. These perspectives explain the relationship between social support networks and their positive effect on the health and well-being of the elderly. These perspectives are stress and coping perspective, social constructionist perspective, and relationship perspective. Let us first study the stress and the coping perspective. This perspective hypothesizes that social support acts as a buffer or protection against the effect of the stressful life events on the well-being and health. This happens mainly because of 2 reasons. The individual either believes that social support is present, which in turn leads to less threatening perception of stressful life events, or the social support that is actually present in the form of financial, emotional and verbal support. The coping mechanism of the individual is facilitated through the presence of social support. Consequently, the negative effect of stress is reduced, leading to a state of well-being. Let us now study the second perspective, that is a social constructionist perspective. Social constructionism rests on the premise that the reality is socially constructed. Social support is a process that operates in social or ecological context and is characterized by transactions between the people and their social networks. Constructionist perspective to social support suggests that there may be no clear consensus across individuals or groups as to what comprises supportive behaviors. Further, since self is located in a social context, both are inextricably linked. Therefore, self is a reflection of how one is viewed by others. According to the symbolic interactionism perspective, identity is derived in part from the roles we occupy and create in a social context. Individuals occupy or adopt various roles like that of a father, son, sibling, scholar, etc. Role concepts that are shared among a group of people help to guide social interaction by providing a common set of expectations about how people should act in different roles. Evaluations of the self are based on the role performance, which is presumed to be rooted in social interactions. Social constructionism postulates that people identify themselves with the standards of the group or social network that they are a part of, and this can facilitate healthy behaviors like exercise, visits to physicians, etc., and reduce detrimental behaviors like alcoholism. One manifestation of the social constructionism is the social cognition approach that draws heavily from the social cognition theories of psychopathology and personality. This approach suggests that social support is concerned primarily with the perception of support. When a person develops stable beliefs about the supportiveness of others, the perceived social support is shaded by these beliefs. In comparison to those individuals who have low levels of perceived social support, people with high perceived social support interpret others' behaviors as more supportive. Perceived support is more shaped by the impressionistic understanding of the recipient of the support about the personality of the support giver, rather than the actual support that is provided. Negative thoughts about social support stimulate negative thoughts about self, which ultimately leads to emotional distress. Let us now study the next perspective, the relationship perspective. This perspective postulates that social support networks with positive social interactions with members are likely to reduce negative feelings of isolation and loneliness. Several related theories focus on the link between older adults' strategies for investing their social network and well-being. Carstensen's 1992 social emotional selectivity theory focuses on social relationships in old age. According to this theory, as resources and energies decline in late life, older adults shed less intimate or rewarding relationships and increase their emotional investment in relationships that are more intimate or rewarding. The thrust is on the enhancement of the present life through meaningful social network of friends and family. This results in the formation of a circle of close relationships, which become a source of optimism, hope, happiness, and humor for the elderly. Let us now discuss the types of social support networks. Social support network typology given by Wenger in 1991. A social support network typology has been provided by Wenger in 1991, where the typology was derived based upon in-depth interviews with the elderly, focusing on the size, composition, and function of the social support networks. It classifies networks into 5 types, which falls into 2 broad categories. First category is the integrated social network type. In this, the first one is locally integrated. These social support networks are characterized by close involvement of the aged with the both local family members, friends, neighbors, and the community. These networks are larger than other types. This network provides excellent social support. Second is wider community focused. These social support networks are characterized by the absence of local family members, but there is extensive contact with neighbors and friends and with relatives such as adult children who live some distance away from the elderly. Second category is the restricted social network types. Under this, the first one is a local self-contained. These social support networks are characterized by a household focused lifestyle, little or no relationships with relatives, kin and community, though the person may receive some help from neighbors. Second is family dependent. These social support networks are described by close ties with local family but with few friends and neighbors. This network is often based on a shared household living system with adult children or sibling or very near separated households. This network type becomes common and important as people become older and is conducive to help frail elderly manage their daily activities. The third is a private restricted. This type of social support is characterized by an absence of local family, few friends and minimal social contact. Apart from these 5 typologies, some people have networks that appear intermediate between integrated and restricted types. Next comes the social support network typology given by Fiore et al. In 2006. The social convoy model by Antonucci in 1990 states that there are systemic variations among social support network arrangements of individuals based upon personal, that is age, gender, personality, and situational, that is resources and demand factors. Fiore et al. In 2006. With this approach, a network typology approach was developed to synthesize the complex network arrangements in a parsimonious way by Fiore et al. In 2006. Using this typology, individual social relationship patterns can be classified into 4 different types based on how they arrange their network ties or allocate their networking efforts with different social contacts. Although small variations exist across populations, studies indicate both qualitatively and quantitatively that individuals can be consistently classified into 4 basic network types based on their social relationship characteristics. The 4 types are: first one, the diverse network type. Individuals with a diverse network type maintain a broad range of supportive relationships with friends, family, neighbors, and frequently participate in various social activities. Compared to other network types, such networks are richer in social capital than other types of networks. Second is a friend-focused network type. Those with a friend-focused network type have frequent interactions with friends or neighbors but fewer interactions with family members. Third is the family-focused network type. People with family-focused network type arrange their social life exclusively around families and have few active relationships with other types like neighbors and friends. Fourth type is a restricted network type. Those with the restricted network type have limited engagement in all kinds of social relations. Let us now discuss the relationship between social support network and health. First is the relationship between social support network and health. The positive effect of social network on health has been well established by research. In a longitudinal study by Raffinson, Shankar and Steptoe in 2015 investigating the influence of social network characteristics on subjective well-being over 6 years in a population sample of older adults, that is inclusive of 4,116 participants, was found that social network size and network contact frequency were positively and independently associated with future life satisfaction and quality of life after controlling for confounding factors including demographic characteristics, socioeconomic factors and long-standing illness. In contrast, social network diversity was not independently related to future subjective well-being. Hence, the role of close relationships and frequent contact in later life is particularly important. Social isolation can occur when the social network is deficient or absent. Researchers have provided a clear evidence for the health promoting effects of social relationships in the case of elderly. Studies with the socially isolated elder samples suggest that they have a 2 to 4 times increased risk of mortality as compared to those with optimum social support. There is also considerable evidence that inadequate social relations have an adverse impact on mental health, with an increased risk of depression and even self-harm. Interestingly, poor social network is associated with cognitive decline in the elderly. Second, let us study the mechanisms through which social support affects the health. The pathways through which social network affects health of the elderly has been investigated extensively through research. There are several pathways or mechanisms through which social relations have an impact on health. The previous investigations have used social relationships to explain variations in health of the elderly. Multiple theories have been proposed to explain this causal direction. The influence of the social network is manifested in the provision of social support, promoting social attachment, access to resources and material goods, and exerting social influence. All these manifestations are a result of three primarily underlying pathways: direct physiological stress response, impact on psychological traits, and promotion of health behaviors, as studied by Berkman et al. In 2000. Existing research has indicated that diverse network types are better in promoting health as compared to restricted network types. Lake, Jones and Moore in 2012 assessed whether social capital, that is resources embedded in one's social network, is associated with the physical inactivity defined as a state in which body's movement is minimal. Their findings suggest that diverse social networks expand one's range of informational sources, social support and access to material resources, and this reduces the scope of physical inactivity and consequently obesity, type 2 diabetes, coronary heart diseases and even certain types of cancers. Similarly, studies have indicated that diverse social support networks have greater access to resources and lower risk of excesses, adiposity and obesity. Moreover, a greater diversity of network contacts, implying a high level of social capital, is positively related to a sense of accomplishment and mastery, which is an important dimension of psychological well-being. The role expectancy theory says that when others have expectations from a role occupied by an individual, it leads to better self-value and a sense of meaning in life. Hence, being a part of social network is akin to occupying meaningful roles, which leads to better self-worth and meaning in life. Although the other network types, it has been found that the restricted network type is the least helpful for the elderly and lacks all kinds of social resources. Comparisons have been drawn between family-centered and friend-centered support networks. The studies conducted in Western context suggest that friend-centered social networks are better than family-centered networks in enhancing physical as well as psychological well-being. The possible explanation is that friendships are voluntary in nature and one engages in them because they bring benefits and provide emotional gratification. While family ties can be obligatory and rooted in the socio-cultural context which cannot be easily severed, and even when they turn into a liability as opposed to a rewarding relationship. Families are givens, whereas friendship is what one chooses, and therefore they bring more contentment. Some researchers have also argued that some older people prefer independence, and on receiving excessive support, these adults may experience helplessness, lowered self-esteem, vulnerability and loss of personal dignity. This indicates a tension in many elderly social lives. Older adults cherish and benefit from their connections to tightly connected families, but they also value autonomy. A recent research has indicated that instrumental help provided to the elderly by the family members may pose a hindrance in recovering from mobility difficulties due to excessive care and discouragement to take initiatives. This may be detrimental to the elderly's health. Let us now take a look at the social support network in India. India has traditionally a joint family setup. There has been a practice of the elderly staying with their children during the late years of their life. The elderly are treated as indispensable for value inculcation in younger generation. Not only in the family but also in the neighborhood and larger community, the elderly have occupied a respected position. However, this scenario is gradually changing with the Western concept of nuclear families affecting the Indian familial setup. Industrialization and fast pace of life have affected the quality of interaction of the elderly with the younger generation, since the latter find little time for them. K.D. Gangrade, 1987, has noted that in order to deal with the problems of the aged, one must study the social networks in the Indian social structure. Gangrade further emphasized that social support networks tie the families, work groups, neighbors and others together to form a live-in social world of people. An extensive study was carried out by Willingen and Chadha in 1990 to understand the nature, size and composition of the social support networks of older people residing in Delhi and Kentucky, USA. The objective was also to do a cross-cultural comparison between the two. An interview schedule was developed for this purpose. Participants of the study included those who were above 60 years of age. From the Kentucky sample, it was found that the mean network size of different age cohorts differed from each other. The network size was highest for the elderly in the age group of 65 to 69 years, after which the network size decreased progressively as the age increased. The oldest old age cohort, 80 years and above, had the smallest mean network size. The results suggest that network disengagement normally occurs for the oldest old category. Prior to this age, the social support networks tend to be maintained. In terms of the nature of the exchanges in the network of the elderly, it was found positive exchanges among the members of a network was positively related to the size of the networks. The Delhi-based age cohort included sample with the age of 55 years and older. The results were similar to the Kentucky sample, as it was found that the network sizes were highest at the time of retirement, 60 to 64 years, but later they declined with age and the oldest old age cohort had the smallest network size. There were striking similarities between the samples from Delhi and Kentucky, suggesting that despite having more of joint families set up, 85% of sample in India lived in joint families in India and nuclear families in USA. The elderly from the two cultural setup had similar network sizes as well as patterns of decline. Thus, it can be concluded, though not without limitations in terms of sample size and representativeness, that the network size show a similarity of pattern throughout the life course. Well, now let us summarize what all we have discussed in this chapter. Social support networks play a crucial role in promoting the health and well-being of the elderly. Over a period of time, it has been realized that the social networks do not only constitute the family but also friends, neighbors and larger community. The social networks can be very diverse, including close ties with family, friends, neighbors and community, or very restricted to only family or friends. Research has tried to establish the pathways through which social networks influence health. They affect health through physiological as well as psychological mechanisms. Further, diverse social networks have had more positive outcomes as compared to the restricted social networks. In the Indian context, social support networks have been cherished by individuals since ancient times because of a joint family setup and extended kinship networks. The elderly reside with their children and relatives, which prove to be an immense source of social support. However, due to gradual shift from the joint to the nuclear family setup, the quality of social networks is degrading, and it has been found through research that social network sizes reduce as the individual ages. This may negatively affect their well-being and health.